or those who maybe don't have fathers or father figures in their lives. There's a lot of different ways too that we'll get into about grieving your father even if he is still living. So here to talk about that grief and how to support women in recovery from relationship trauma that's caused by what's often called daddy issues is Christian Jackson, a licensed professional counselor and an author of her self-published book, which I have here. It's a gorgeous book titled Daddy Issues, How to Detangle from the Sins of Our Fathers. So I want to talk all about this book, but first, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
You know, I really appreciate that you put it out there and calling it daddy issues, because I think that's a thing that a lot of women routinely kind of maybe joke about even sometimes, but it's real.
It is.
And you have this whole book on it, but first I just want to get into a little bit more about what you do. And I guess just to start things off, how do you even identify if you do have issues related to the father figure in your life?
Yes, I typically like to say that if you are alive, you have daddy issues.
Okay.
And so if you are thinking about, like you said, you say the word or the phrase daddy issues, and lots of colorful words may come up. Don't Google it. Be careful about that, right?
Right.
The way that I approach supporting women who have daddy issues is I'm trying to change the narrative. So essentially, it is really important to consider that women with daddy issues are women who are recovering from emotional trauma. And so I based daddy issues, my diagnosis, on two real diagnoses in the book that we use as therapists. It's called the DSM-5. Right now there's a text revision, but at the time, separation anxiety, reactive attachment disorder, two major things that I considered when I made those list of symptoms about daddy issues.
My goodness, especially when it comes to women, how important is that relationship with your father when you're coming in and kind of building what it means to form normal relationships or interpersonal relationships? How important is that father figure?
Yes, it's super important, right? So father issues are a piece of how we conceptualize how we show up in relationships, how we relate. We just saw a wonderful daddy-daughter duo, right? So we're just learning about how to interact, how to show up for yourself, how to show up for other people, whether or not we're showing up too much for other people because perhaps we're trying to get daddy's attention because we never got it. There are so many narratives. And I like to talk about the spectrum. You know, I have women who have great relationships with their fathers and develop a certain kind of complex all the way to not even knowing who their fathers are. So there's lots of different stories in between.
I'm sure. I want to talk to you about, because I think a lot of times like Mother's Day, Father's Day, when there's that focus on a particular relationship, for some people who don't have that relationship, it can be a really hard day to get through, or if there's unresolved trauma there. One of the things that you said you could speak to when we chatted a little bit before the show is that for people who have lost their fathers, that's already, they're grieving just from the loss.
Right.
But how do you help women or clients in general navigate not only grieving, but having unresolved issues that they never got to get closure from?
Oh man, that is a major thing, because I myself, my father and I are not speaking. So my book does not tie up with a nice little bow that says, and we're best friends, right? So you can grieve someone, like you said, if they're still alive. There's that symbolic relationship, what I thought my relationship with my dad would be like, all of those things. And so it's really important for us to consider what we want in our lives and how we want our relationships to look, because we may not have something that really will inform the way that we show up. And so it's really just about defining how you want your relationships to look, how you may be getting in your own way. Even with people who have great relationships with their father, then there are some values and things that may shift as you become an adult and you have your own experiences. And so I invite you to not ignore the things that you're grieving, right? We work through that through the stages, and even that narrative is changing as far as whether or not there are linear stages of grief. But acknowledging how I feel that my father's not there, the relationship is not what it is, because if we push that down, then that's going to be tricky for us as well. And also celebrating, coming into a part of your life where you do get to choose and you do have the opportunity to say what you want and involve the people that you want and really make the family that you probably didn't have. And now you have the chance to say who you are in this relationship and really look forward to what your life can be.
I love that you're changing the narrative in that way. It's really, you can have a positive outcome of this by identifying things that maybe did not work out for you in your childhood that you can change when building your own family. And I want to also stress that you do talk about some of the positive effects of a father-child relationship. So you do share some of your own story in your book.
Yes.
And I think that's important too, in terms for readers to be, you know, relate to you and know that someone's been through something very similar.
Yes.
I could talk to you all day. I actually have a list of questions that we're not even going to get to because I have to wrap up. But the last question I want to ask you is, if someone's sitting at home right now watching this interview and they're thinking, maybe I do have some unresolved trauma that I haven't dealt with, or I have some issues with my relationship with my father, or maybe it's impacting me in a way, where do they start? It can be overwhelming to think, how do I deal with this? Where would you suggest they start?
I think acceptance is a huge deal. So if you're sitting at home and you're thinking, oh, this can be me and this is an ugly term, could I really? Me and my dad have a great relationship. I have kind of a 5-step system. So GRACE is an acronym in my book. G, get to know your symptoms. R, rescript your negative narratives. Address with the A, your self-care needs. C, connect with proper people and enforce your boundaries. That's just something you can do on your own without even calling a therapist, although I'm totally available. But if you just need to sit with that on your own, then those are just a couple of things that I would suggest.
Wow. The acronym GRACE, Christian, thank you, and giving yourself some grace,
Giving
right?
yourself
navigating
grace,
this.
exactly.
Yeah. I appreciate you coming in. Once again, Christian Jackson, the author of Daddy Issues, How to Detangle from the Sins of Our Fathers. We will make sure to post the link to Christian's information on our website, WIStv.com. We have much more